Hey there, it's another beautiful day. Let's watch some stuff.
The astronauts that have been stuck in space for months just dropped pictures in Santa hats, and social media is buzzing with questions. First of all, if you didn't know, there are two astronauts that have been stuck in space for a very long time. They go by the name Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore, and in June they went on a space trip that was only supposed to last 8 days, but they haven't came back, and they're not due back till March. Now the question circulating around social media is, where the heck did those Santa hats come from? Because there's no way you packed Santa hats in June for an 8-day trip, and that's where all the conspiracies started. Turns out SpaceX is sending them care packages, and they're getting holiday meals, clothes, and all that good stuff. And then a common question arises. If SpaceX is able to transfer stuff to them back and forth from Earth, why can't they just tag along and come back with them? Especially for Sunita Williams, people are expressing their concern for her dramatic weight loss. I mean, they said they have to eat at least 4,000 calories up there to maintain their weight. I'm no space expert, but I too, just like everyone else, have a lot of questions about this situation.
Okay, the Santa hats thing is kind of easily explained because they're not the only people that are on the space station. There are other folks there, and they probably sent them up in one of the many ships that have gone up there to resupply the space station. So they could have been up there for who knows how long, for who knows whomever, right? As far as why they haven't come back on this other thing, I'm pretty sure it's because Elon Musk didn't send a passenger shuttle up there, and the next passenger shuttle is scheduled for that time, and that's when they're going to hitch a ride back.
The FBI raided the Phoenix facility in hazmat suits as part of a multi-state investigation into the illegal trafficking and sale of human body parts. But for the first time, we're now able to see the testimony from one of the FBI agents who conducted the raid, and what he recounts is shocking. He said he found a cooler filled with male genitalia, a bucket of heads, arms, and legs, infected heads, and one of the most disturbing findings, called a morbid joke in the lawsuit, a small woman's head sewn onto a large male torso like Frankenstein and hung up on the wall, with no identification tags on the bodies.
Tools that are not appropriate for dismembering scientific bodies.
Harp says his mother's ashes showed up by mail on his doorstep shortly after the raid, but he isn't even sure they're her ashes. He says his mom and grandma wanted to help medical research after their death, yet doesn't believe they ever made it out of the BRC.
That sounds like the beginning of a horror movie, right? They go into this place and find all these bodies chopped up and sewn back together in the wrong places. That's absolutely horrifying that these poor people had to go through this with their loved ones. You know, they thought they were donating their body to science, and it turns out it's just some jerk holes screwing around, sewing things together. Oh my God, that's gross. That is terrible.
We have some major breaking news. It's just been revealed that Justice Clarence Thomas took more gifts and more vacations funded by Republican billionaire donors and did not report it. The Senate Judiciary Committee just revealed a number of trips and gifts that have never been seen before that Justice Clarence Thomas received by Republican mega donor Harlan Crow. These trips include a July 2021 private jet trip to Saranac, New York, and an October 2021 private jet and yacht trip to New York City. And that's not all. The Senate Judiciary Committee also released an exhaustive list stretching all the way back to 2017 of different methods of travel that Clarence Thomas has taken, funded by Harlan Crow. And here's more, with the most recent one being in 2022. Again, just plain and simple corruption taking place on the Supreme Court. This is not the first time that Clarence Thomas has done this, and it's probably not the last. I hope that we can all agree that no Supreme Court justice, regardless of political belief, should be taking luxurious vacations funded by multi-billionaires. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Clarence Thomas needs to step down from the court. This is unacceptable.
Absolutely, 100%. Any political figure whatsoever shouldn't be taking this kind of gift. It's a bribe. They're just not calling it a bribe. It's a bribe to get them in with their little special interest, whatever, in the bills, right? As they pass and they're all tucked in there nice and hidden. That's what's going on, and that needs to stop. Any political figurehead that is taking anything from anybody for any reason They gotta go.
As the 118th Congress, known as the least productive Congress in U.S. history, closed up shop this week, we saw a return to the same old dysfunction it became famous for. In just the last hour, President Joe Biden signed the stopgap government funding bill after the Senate approved the measure just minutes after the midnight deadline. It was once again a stressful and frankly unnecessary road to that final bill for House Republicans. On Wednesday, with a bipartisan agreement ready to go, what now seems like Vice President-elect Donald Trump and his new billionaire bestie, President-elect Elon Musk, torpedoed that bipartisan deal. Musk X'ter tweeted, whatever, out more than 100 attacks on that bipartisan deal, and Trump unreasonably demanded a last-minute extension on the debt limit. A slimmer version 2.0, approved by Musk and Trump, also failed to pass, with 38 Republicans voting against Trump's debt limit plan. Running out of time and options, House Speaker Mike Johnson was finally able to pass a third version, this time dumping Trump's debt limit increase and keeping our government open for a mere 3 more months. Although embattled and likely embittered, Mike Johnson vows things will be different in the new year. With Donald Trump returning, I know gaslighting when I see it. Hard pass.
And all of the Congress folks got to fly their private jets home for Christmas. Of course she knows gaslighting when she sees it. She's a professional gaslighter. Hello. But as far as them calling Elon Musk, President-elect Musk, that is absolutely ridiculous. They're just trying to push their stupid agenda, which is stupid. I'm glad they figured something out. It's only a 3-month fix. And there's all kinds of, fluff in there that got taken out, which is wonderful. And all of the Congress folks got to fly their private jets home for Christmas.
So now that we have this approved continuing resolution, a lot of people are asking what the hell is in this bill. Well, I took a look at it, pretty cursory review. It's only 118 pages, and the only things that I really picked out were the following. It gives the government 3 months of funding that allows them to pay for their overheads like employee costs, military costs, things like that. It gives $110 billion for disaster aid, which we all know that's needed, right? North Carolina, a lot of them are still functioning without heat. I mean, FEMA dropped the ball. They probably should have had this looked at and passed already. There's a farm bill that gives $10 billion to farmers. That's to deal with the market and really to keep them stable. It also gives provisions to the military to address some of the rising concerns regarding drones, and it just gives them the ability to spend on some countermeasures. And then lastly, Congress is getting a pay increase. Now, before you freak out, realize that it's only a 3.8%, which just takes care of the rise of the cost of living and the inflation. It's something they get every 2 years, so not really a big deal. All in all, it's not that bad. It really isn't. It's not perfect, but it's not 1,700 pages.
You didn't think I wasn't going to tell you what was in the bill, did you? I mean, well, I didn't. He did. I just facilitated his message to your face. There you go. My interest was particularly piqued with the money that was given to figure out this drone situation. The government already knows everything there is to know about this drone situation. Why did we give them money? Who decided that was a good idea when they already know what's going on?
I think that this is a test. It's a test to see how we respond to things like this. Is it possible collectively that we can have an open mind and be objective about all of this? Or do we have to be cynical and imagine the worst, that it's some foreign government and it's always like military and it has to do with things of that nature? If ETs are going to make direct contact with us, we're going to see them in person, it's sort of a staged process by which we get adjusted to it, more comfortable with it, because that's the nature of human beings, is we get extremely startled when something catches us 100% off guard. Extremely. The reptilian brain gets activated and we get into a place of fear. And for the situation with UFOs, these higher dimensional intelligences know that that's the case. They know the way our brains operate. And they know that startling us with this like incredibly direct contact hasn't worked. And so the idea is to get rid of the fear, get used to this sort of thing. Contact, it's going to be, if it's consistently in the news, we keep hearing these orbs. And for me, this is a stepping stone. And it's really funny to sort of hear the panic of, oh yeah, shoot it down, shoot it down, shoot it down. Just embrace it, listen to it, think about it. So we're right on track. When I see these headlines and I see it's getting top level government attention, I like it.
Top level government attention. Like Congress voting on giving them some money to figure it out? Huh. I don't think I like that. They know what's going on. Most of the people, we have an idea of what's going on, and whether it's the government, most people are going to be like, yeah, we know. If it's aliens, most people are going to be like, yeah, we know. People aren't really scared. We all pretty much know that our government's behind it. And if it's another government, come at me, bro.
If you're a drone pilot and you're concerned about the FAA's remote ID law changes, I've got an update for you. Here we are on the FAA website, and this just came in September 13th, 3 days prior to when the rules were actually supposed to change. The FAA extends remote ID enforcement date by 6 months. Drone pilots who are unable to comply with the broadcast requirements of the remote ID rule will now have until March 16th, 2024 to equip their aircraft. After that date, operators could face fines and suspension or revocation of pilot certificates. So all of you that are flying around without a remote ID, you guys are good to do so until March 16th.
Did you catch that? March 16th, 2024, to have an FAA remote ID on your drone. Don't worry, I have a little bit more information on this. Check it out.
So you got yourself a drone. Now what? Under FAA Part 107, you got to register this drone, even if you just use it for hobby use. Anything over 0.55 pounds or 240 grams requires registration. Go to FAA.org for more information.
I just did that for the thumbnail. For some reason, people click on wide open surprise faces. I don't know, it works. Hopefully it works. So some of you were asking, what exactly is remote ID? Well, remote ID is a technology that will be required to be on all drones. And remote ID will send out information so law enforcement, FAA agents, whatever, will be able to see everything about your drone, all of the information. And then the bad part about it is not only will the FAA and law enforcement be able to see this information, but also the general public. And then the very worst part about it is the general public will have access to not only your drone's location and information, but also your precise location. So if someone has a problem with you flying your drone, they're going to be able to track you and come to you wherever you are and confront you.
You don't say. So the FAA requires all drones over 0.55 pounds, that's just over 8 ounces, to be registered with this remote ID? Huh. And the government has no clue what's going on with all of these drones? That makes zero sense whatsoever. I just watched a story last night about some guy, this is why I found this information, some guy was flying his drone over a stadium. And you're not allowed to have your drones over people, right? I guess that was a rule. And within minutes, police were at this guy's house because they have his phone number, they have his address, they were able to ping that drone and find out who's doing this. They found him within minutes. And these things are supposedly the size of cars or SUVs, and we got no clue what the hell they're doing up there. You're right. Right.
Enforcement, significant authority to intercept private electronic communications without consent. For example, the bill would allow the government to conduct dragnet surveillance of the phones innocent Americans traveling through U.S. airports as long as the government claims they are doing it to neutralize a drone. So in order to look at the information that might be coming to a drone, it may be that you capture all the information of everybody surrounding an airport or everybody who lives near an airport. Once you have all that data, what are the assurances that the government isn't looking at your data in addition to the data that may be related to flying the drone? This is not just about security. It's about unchecked government overreach. It's about capitalizing on fear and media-driven hysteria to jam through sweeping legislation that could violate the civil liberties of American people. Congress has a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check on the executive power, not as a rubber stamp for it. The federal government already has the power to deal with drones. The federal government already has the power to stop any drones that are in airspace around airports. The federal government already has the power to protect its air bases. So if there is a significant problem here, the Biden administration needs to come forward and let us know, who are these drones? Who's operating these drones? What is the federal government doing to protect either airports or bases from this? Instead, we are told by the Biden administration there is no threat to our national security. So let's first insist on truth and transparency from the Biden administration before offering up legislation that is feel good, pat somebody on the back and say, oh, we've done something about drones. We are strong on drones. Congress has a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check on executive power, not as a rubber stamp. We owe it to the American people to demand compelling justification, meaningful safeguards, and full transparency before granting any new surveillance authorities. We are a nation of laws, not fear, not panic, and not manufactured urgency. We do not trade away our freedoms, our privacy, and our constitutional protections for vague promises of security. I will object to this bill today, but I am open to talking with the authors of this bill about how we could have enhanced ability to interrupt drone activity, but done while protecting all Americans' constitutional right to privacy. Madam President, I object.
So I just learned something valuable, and I hope you did too. I was going to go back and edit the reactions that I had to those videos the first time that I watched them, but I'm okay with being wrong, and I'm okay with correcting myself, and I'm okay with other people correcting me too. It's fine. Apparently, part of the bill, the funding bill that was in there about drones, is allowing the government to check our phones, basically, do a sweep of our phones around airports to find out who's operating these drones. Is that what that is? Because if that's what that is, holy cow, it just got passed. And that's the money that they're giving the government to spy on us. It feels like that's what the plan was the entire time. Put these drones up before we have to make this emergency bill to keep the government open, throw some money in to allow the government to spy on people at around airports by pinging their phones or whatever it is they're doing. That is absolutely crazy. That feels right. Is that right? I mean, is anybody else getting that vibe?
My guess is, though, right now, the biggest threat to the system is Luigi Mangione. However, what do I mean? I mentioned this before. This man's case, during the trial, and it has to be reported, because if the mainstream don't do it, all of us independents are going to do it anyway, yeah? So they need to run damage control and start it earlier, which is what they're doing. This is going to expose the entire medical insurance industry for what it is. A con game, a scam, a way of ripping people off for massive amounts of money. And legally too. It's almost like slavery. But they're intrinsically tied to the medical industrial complex. Big pharma, everything else. This also ties into agriculture. Big agriculture with all the pesticides and everything else, the cause of sicknesses that get big pharma to supply the drugs to treat the people that make more money. It's also tied to the military industrial complex, because they also come up with the pesticides through poisons that they use on people. The raw minerals that they take from countries that they've conquered, that supplies big agriculture, that supplies the medical industry, that supplies the government, and therefore the system with all their money. Everything is tied in together. And this assassination that Mr. Mangione has done is probably the most incredibly well thought out and intelligent assassinations to have ever have been committed. And nobody knew who this guy was at one time. Not Mangione, I mean the guy who was the CEO But he was CEO of the biggest medical insurance firm in the whole of the US. And just that one seemingly insignificant act has the potential to completely throw the system out into the sunlight and show it for what it is and bring the whole thing down.
Y'all know who that is. That's my buddy Sam Fisher, and he makes a very excellent point here. He hit the nail right on the head, and I'm hoping that this little insignificant action does create a chain reaction, which brings down big pharma and it brings down all of the big stuff that needs to come down. And healthcare, it's got to be changed. It's awful. And unfortunately, somebody had to have their bucket kicked to make a big enough ripple to start this.
In 1994, Gloria Ramirez, a young woman battling cancer, arrived at a hospital in Riverside, California, in critical condition. When staff began treating her, they noticed a strange, oily sheen on her skin and a garlic-like smell. Suddenly, several medical workers collapsed, complaining of dizziness and nausea. Gloria tragically passed away, but her body emitted strange fumes that caused further illness in those nearby. Months of investigation revealed the truth. Ramirez had been using dimethyl sulfoxide, DMSO, as a home remedy for her pain. When hospital staff administered oxygen, it converted the compound into dimethyl sulfate, a highly toxic gas. Though tragic, this case became a rare and fascinating example of a chemical reaction inside the human body.
I just thought this was a super interesting story, how this home remedy for pain she was administering to herself ended up doing all kinds of damage to the folks around her. There was another part that said when somebody drew her blood, it smelled like ammonia because once it was meeting with the oxygen, it turned into some other compound, which was making people all not so good.
The Hasdalen lights have baffled the scientific community since the 1980s, when people started noticing these strange, mysterious orbs that glowed, flashed, and flew across the Norwegian sky. Some theorize the lights may be caused by gases from the ground mixing with the air, or maybe particles from the sun messing with our atmosphere. However, this has led many people to believe that these could be visitations from extraterrestrial life.
Absolutely, it's aliens. I believe it. I don't know, maybe that is where they cross over or they enter our atmosphere, or maybe that's where the plasma beings, live and they shoot off all their things from there. I don't know. But it's interesting how it only happens in this particular region of Norway.
Modern science wants you to believe that this is Earth's shadow coming in, doing a turn, and leaving this way. But ancient Hindu cosmology talks about Rahu and Ketu, which aren't actually planets, but balls of energy that interfere with celestial bodies as they pass over them, which actually sounds a lot like dark celestial bodies in modern science, or black holes, or dark matter. In Hindu cosmology, Rahu and Ketu is what causes our lunar and solar eclipses, which the story sounds a lot like the mystery of dark bodies we have today. I found this article on dark stars, which have similar properties of black holes. You can't actually see the star, but you can see when it passes over light. But this makes me think they know exactly what these dark stars are, as you see, acting like a stellar youth serum. What's crazy is Rahu and Ketu came from this entity who got cut in half after taking some Amrita and becoming immortal, and then became Rahu and Ketu. Amrita is an elixir, a potion, a youth serum. And look what I found in this article of the dark stars. Read this. Acting like a stellar youth serum. So do they know what's going on? Is the study of dark celestial bodies and dark matter really the study of Rahu and Ketu? I've watched Globers try to steelman the Selenilian eclipse, which is called the impossible eclipse because it's when the sun and the moon both are above Earth's horizon. They try to say that really the sun is down here, but it just looks like it's up here like a mirage. But how is an illusion casting light onto the Earth? I don't know. This is their explanation. Or this is their explanation. They say that you're actually 5,000 feet tall and you can really see Look, if the Earth and Moon are just above Earth's horizon, there's no way to cast a shadow onto the Moon.
All right, as I'm sure you all already know, I am a globe propagandist. Always have been. There's a very good chance that I always will be. But I had never thought about this until the other day. The sun and the moon were both up in the sky, pretty high. And I actually was paying attention to it and started thinking about it, which is something that I have never even thought of. They tell you, the last picture that was shown, that's why it's doing that. And then you just kind of, okay, that's how it's going, and it's in the back of your mind. But I was looking at it, and part of the moon was shadowed by the earth, but they were all both pretty high in the sky. I'm still a globe propagandist, but that definitely made my brain do funny things.
This is one of Nikola Tesla's lesser-known inventions created in 1901 called the Tesla Spirit Radio. This is an audio recording of what he heard after he turned it on. Let me know in the comments, does it sound like spirits in another dimension or just tumultuous frequencies?
I think the word he was trying to say there was tumultuous, and that's not the right word. Maybe tremulous? I don't know, but that's not the right word. And those sounds, I wonder if maybe Nikola Tesla was like capturing the beings that are like living outside of our visible light frequency. Wouldn't that be awesome? That's a pretty cool thought.
This was the result of a formula which was given to me by a man who landed a ship at my airport in 1953. And we put this formula under research, tested a number of experiments on a bench in a good electronics lab in Chicago, and we produced phenomenal results with evidence that we should do it on a larger scale in order to be able to do more with it. And this evolved out of something that started in 1953 into a 4-story high machine that we're working on down there today. Our formula has no time factor, which electronic formula does have. And on the other hand, electronic science has only had 2 dimensions to work with, the electric pattern and the magnetic pattern perpendicular to it. And we discovered a 3rd zone, which we call a time zone, and we are working through this zone with an effort to orient the magnetic field to give us other results than our science can obtain at present. This isn't a little box. This is a 4-story machine focusing fields that we can orient to produce this zone big enough for a man to get into. We've discovered this zone is subject to thought. Now, since time doesn't record events the way we do on calendars and clocks, you could only record an event by thinking of it. Now, theoretically, we believe we can take a videotape magnetic camera into the time zone and photograph Lincoln's Gettysburg Address or Caesar's armies marching or anything that's ever happened. You know how you talk into a tape on a tape recorder and play the interruptions back, identical to the play that you made. The Earth's magnetic field is the same way. You can put interruptions into it and play them back out of it. An associate of ours in creating a magnetic coupler with this principle coupled in the Earth's magnetic field and played back TV shows from stations that aren't even in business anymore. It was conducted in Santa Monica by an associate of mine.
Why hasn't this hit the headlines throughout the world? That's a time machine in action. If I can...
Jack, the reason it hasn't hit the world is because, as I understand it now, the Navy Department took him and the research over because he also discovered he could bounce magnetic echoes off the ionosphere and locate submarines under the ocean regardless of where they were.
How freaking cool is that? And then the Navy just swoops in and takes it over because they think it can be used as radar. I think there's a lot of this going on in that statement. Well, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Don't forget to hit that like button. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Come on back in a couple of days. We're going to watch some new stuff. I'll say different things. It's going to be fantastic. Until then, have a wonderful day. So, I love this shirt. Check it out. It's hilarious. Grinch face. My daughter got it for me like 2 Christmases ago when I was a lot bigger than I am now. And I haven't worn it since last Christmas. I had COVID last Christmas, so I was up in the room all by myself for an entire week, which sucked. But it smells. It smells like I just washed it. It smells fantastic.